Next, we move on to a small, unassuming town in the northwest corner of Louisiana named Plain Dealing. Back in the 1830s, a Virginia family settled about 30 miles north of Shreveport and built a large plantation along the Red River. And just like the Red River, the 167-year-old story of plain dealing has its fair share of twists and turns.
In northwest Louisiana, there is a town full of plain-dealing churches and preachers, as well as plain-dealing police, even a plain-dealing business district complete with a plain-dealing tooth doctor. What else would you expect for a town known simply as Plain-Dealing, Louisiana? So what's in a name? For some answers, step inside for a little food for thought. Del, Kitty, and Annie Lou are more than happy to help.
Kitty, from what I'm hearing, you're a good local historian to the area. How did plain dealing get its name?
There was a plain dealing plantation that was called that after the plantation home of the Gilmers back in Virginia. And what we were told as children growing up, and this may be myth or legend, but the name plain dealing, we were told, referred to the fair treatment of slaves on the plantation.
George Gilmer, the man who built the plain dealing plantation in 1839, was also said to run his business in a plain dealing and honest manner. The plantation homes of George, or that of his son James, no longer exist. All that is left behind, a few black and white pictures of the son's plantation home, known as Orchard Place. What does remain 167 years later is a small town of about 1,100 people that still hold true to their golden rule name. Every day of her plain-dealing life, Annie Lou Giles treats others the way she'd like to be treated from her downtown restaurant. The walls of this cafe are decorated with historic pictures and artifacts supplied by thankful customers over the years. Giles Snack Shop, also known as Annie Lou's by the locals, boasts some of the best home cooking in the state, featuring plate lunches, hamburgers, and awesome coconut cream pie. This is the place where plain-dealing people greet, meet, and eat.
It's not that we have that big of a business, we just have the traffic. Everybody comes here, they may not eat or drink nothing, but they're gonna come visit. And some of them stay half a day. But that's fine, that's what I'm here for. I'm not here for just the dollar, I'm here for my friends, because they mean everything to me.
This must be a great place to catch up on things.
Yes. And the men say the women gossip in the beauty shop, but they don't gossip like the men does in the coffee shop.
They can also talk about some of the wilder times. Right across the street from Annie Lou's is currently an insurance office. But back in 1933, gunshots rang out on February 6th at the First State Bank. Gang leader Charlie Frazier did not capture national attention like Babyface Nelson, but he and his gang did make headlines in plain dealing. Deputy J.L. Butler shot in the bank window and killed one of the bank robbers. Frazier was caught a few days later.
And from my understanding, someone happened to look in the bank window, through the window, and they saw the bank was being robbed. So a deputy was in town. Usually you can look around here now, you're going to see a deputy somewhere. I understand he was standing on the street. There was shots fired and the robbers came out.
But the story gets better. Charlie Frazier made a getaway and got lost.
And when they got turned around, they didn't know where they were at, but they came right back through town with the second shootout.
That's right. Charlie Frazier, with a poor exit strategy, got caught up in a second shootout in town before finally being caught a few days later in Caddo Parish.
But I remember going there and see one of the bandits was shot. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking through the plate glass window, and there was a little hole where the deputy sheriff had shot this bandit.
86-year-old Clark Strayhan is a lifelong plain dealer, 7-handicap golfer, and retired. He worked 51 years in sales for a paper manufacturer in Shreveport. One of his secrets to success, he could tell people he was just a plain-dealing salesman.
And I would go to conventions all over the United States, and I might be up in New York, and somebody would say, "Well, where are you from, Clark?" I'd say, "Well, I'm from near Shreveport." And they said, "Well, what's the name of your place?" I said, "Well, you never heard of it before, but it's from a little town called Plain Dealing." And boy, that would immediately get their attention.
Clark had another attention getter. Back in 1993, the Saturn Motor Company put out a sales brochure, and plain dealing was featured, along with other unusually named U.S. cities. The brochure featured Chance, Oklahoma, as well as Harmony, California.
They evidently were looking for towns with odd names, and certainly plain dealing qualified, because it is an odd name. It's the only town I ever heard of in the world named Plain Dealing.
Back at Annie Lou's, my new friends fill me in about another nearby community that could only happen in Louisiana. It's about another community located close to plain dealing.
It's a community called Swindleville.
What's that?
Swindleville. And I've always heard it was actually in Believe It or Not, Ripley's Believe It or Not, that there was a town called Plain Dealing, and a few miles south there was another town called Swindleville. Yeah. But there was.
Back in the early 1900s, Clark Strayhan's father owned a dry goods store just outside of Swindleville, and Clark can vouch for the Swindle family.
And the Swindles were good people.
Yes, they were.
They weren't cheaters or swindlers.
No, that's right.
Swindles were good people.
They were real high-class people.
Plain dealing residents may relish the simple life, but there is nothing plain about the town cemetery.
These headstones were imported from Italy. They're marble. These are of the Gilmer family. The Gilmer family was the founders of the town of Plain Dealing, and their plantation sat right joining the cemetery here, so this land was donated from the Gilmers as a cemetery. I always think this is the founding fathers laying here. They are due all the respect. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the Gilmers. You can walk around this cemetery and you're going to see there's people from everywhere. Lots of Texas people buried in here that lived here and then moved off and came back. If you ever lived here, you're probably going to be buried here. You always come back here to be buried.
It was true for the Gilmer family, one of the richest families in the country for their time. They made the old plantation property their final resting place. Right across the dirt path is another family plot.
They just got stuck with that name. They couldn't help that. Their last name was Swindle. It was not Swindleville. Swindleville came from their name and was put on the end and made a settlement or a small town south of Plain Dealing. As far as I know, and never heard anything different, the Swindles were really good people. And basically like the Gilmers, they helped lots of people.
Plain Dealing has some of the nicest people you will ever meet. And believe it or not, there was even a Whinham family in Plain Dealing that ran a dry goods store in the mid-1900s. But they spell their name differently from my family, so we don't think there's any relation. Nonetheless, people in Plain Dealing treat you like family. I hope you've enjoyed our storytelling with this edition of Lost Louisiana. By the way, back here in Opelousas, folks hold wonderful cemetery tours filled with all sorts of voices from the past. Proceeds from the tours fund the cemetery restoration project. I recommend you come on down this way if you have the chance. For everyone here at LPB, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again for another edition of Lost Louisiana.